Hello, I'm Joshua Gillespie, and welcome back to Sonic Month, everyone! Today, we'll be looking at the sequel to Sonic the Hedgehog 1, simply titled Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Let's talk a little history about the game. First of all, it came out in 1992, only 1 year after the first game, in order to compete with Nintendo. Some notable additions to the game were the Spin Dash, the multiplayer mode, and of course, everyone's favorite sidekick, Tails Prower. When the game was released, it sold 400,000 copies in the first 7 days. I know that doesn't sound like much today, but when it was released, it was enough back then to coin the term Sonic 2 Day, and it brought Sega's sales up by 50%. The story to Sonic 2 is basically just a follow-up to the original's ending. Dr. Eggman is still searching for the glorious Chaos Emeralds, this time on West Side Island in order to power his Death Egg, and it's up to Sonic and his new friend Tails, whom he meets on West Side Island, to stop him.
Speaking of Tails, let's talk about him. Come on, guys. Let me explain.
Tails was created to be Sonic's sidekick, Sonic's Luigi, but just like Luigi, everyone seems to hate him. But there's one thing about Tails that makes him better than Luigi. He cannot die. Yes, if a second player plugs in a controller on one player mode, they can use Tails and he cannot die, making him a great shield for Sonic during boss battles. Also, he can fly. I know if you use him in single player, he can't, but he would in later games. I think one reason why fans don't seem to like him is because of his voice, which I agree can get annoying after a while, but thankfully he does not speak at all in this game. Among Tails, there were other additions made to this game. One is that you could choose who you wanted to play as. You could play as Sonic and Tails, just Sonic, or just Tails, and in a later episode we'll talk about another character you can play as. Also, as I said before, there is a multiplayer mode. It's a simple running race. There are question mark boxes that can contain things from power-ups, to lives, to even death. There are only 4 stages to choose from though, but it can be fun for about 30 minutes. So now let's talk about the levels. Unlike the first game, the majority of levels only contain 2 acts as opposed to 3 in the last game. The levels are Emerald Hill Zone, Chemical Plant Zone, Aquatic Ruin Zone, Casino Night Zone, Hilltop Zone, Mystic Cave Zone, Oil Ocean Zone, Metropolis Zone, Sky Chase Zone, Winged Fortress Zone, and finally Death Egg Zone, giving us a total of 11 levels. Emerald Hill through Oil Ocean Zone have 2 acts with a boss at the end of the second act. Metropolis Zone has 3, with a boss at the end of the third. Sky Chase and Winged Fortress Zone are only 1 act, but only Winged Fortress has a boss. Death Egg Zone also has 1 act, but it has 2 bosses. Speaking of bosses, they were certainly unique in this game, but 2 of them were repeated in later levels, just with different techniques of attacking. The final 2 bosses are Silver Sonic and the Death Egg Robot, which has been used in later games like Sonic 4 and Sonic Generations. While we're on the topic of levels, let's talk about the music. Sonic 2 has some of my favorite tunes in the entire Sonic franchise, including Chemical Plant Zone, Aquatic Ruin Zone, and of course, Casino Night Zone. One of my favorites is Winged Fortress Zone, because it has this DOS Windows 95 sound to it. The music has become a favorite of video game cover bands, and the music you're listening to is actually from a kick-ass Russian group called Random Encounter. Check them out when you get the chance. Their music is amazing.
Like I said at the beginning of this video, this game came out only 1 year after the original. And when you make a game that fast, obviously some of your ideas are going to have to be scrapped. But one of them wasn't entirely scrapped. If you don't know what I mean, prepare for quite the history lesson. I'm titling this segment Sound Test 10.
The reason why it's called Sound Test 10 is because of something I encountered the first time I went into the sound test option in the game. I wanted to listen to some of the music from the levels, and without access to the internet, this was my only way to do so. But when I clicked on number 10, I heard this. Any fan of Sonic 2 will tell you that this song is from no level in the game. For a long time, I thought it was from a bad ending or something you had to unlock. So I wrote on a note card, Sound Test 10. It was quite some time before I discovered what it was, and when I did, I was shocked. During the making of Sonic 2, there was a level called the Hidden Palace Zone. It was a complete level and was shown during Sega's public showings of the game. Screenshots of the level were also shown in gaming magazines. But when the game was released, the level was missing. Though, through the use of cheat devices such as Game Shark, it's possible to reach this level. Sadly though, it's in an unplayable condition, and unless you use the debug code, you die almost as soon as the level starts.
So, what exactly was the Hidden Palace Zone? Well, from what I've read, it was, as its name implies, a hidden area where you would go after you collected the 7th Chaos Emerald, and this is where Sonic would become Super Sonic. But the idea was scrapped, and sadly so was the level.
For some of the other scrapped levels, apparently there was supposed to be this time travel subplot, similar to the one used later in Sonic CD. Some of the other levels were Dust Hill Zone, Winter Zone, Wood Zone, and Genocide City Zone. Although these levels were scrapped, some earlier than others, some of the elements such as the music and the environments would be used for levels in later Sonic games. Not too long ago, a ROM was released onto the internet that was said to have the full version of the Hidden Palace Zone. It was later confirmed to be a stolen prototype of the game. By using the level select cheat, you can go to a playable Hidden Palace Zone as well as the other scrapped levels, though most only lead to a pit where you die. Now I can understand Sega forgetting to take out the code for Hidden Palace Zone, seeing as how it was supposed to be a secret to begin with, but why did they leave the music in the sound test? The music is actually somewhat ironic, because it has a sad sound to it, almost like a hint at the level being scrapped and nearly forgotten. So, now that I finally got to talk about that, let's get back to the topic of levels. So there's 7 levels with 2 acts, 1 level with 3 acts, and 3 levels with only 1 act. Also, there's 7 special stages. That brings the total number of acts in this game to 27. That's only 2 more than the original. But surprisingly, this game is much longer than the original. Some of these acts can take from 3 to 7 minutes. Sonic 1 took me about an hour and a half to complete, but Sonic 2, it took me about 2.5 hours. I mentioned the Sonic 2 special stages. Sure, it's just the same thing repeated, but these special stages have a 3D look to them, which really helps them stand out. And this design of the characters running forward would be used in later special stages, such as the ones in Sonic CD and Sonic 3 and Knuckles. The difficulty of Sonic 2. You remember how I said Sonic 1 was tough? Well, this game is a lot tougher, but it's more generous. If I was ever near game over, it always seemed like I'd get a continue or an extra life. That doesn't mean the game is easier, no. Some of these pits and spikes just pop out of nowhere, and the enemy placement and movement is just insane, leading to the occasional cheap death. Speed is definitely something you won't find in Sonic 2, specifically Casino Night Zone. This is a level where you have to take it slowly. So, who is Sonic 2 for? Well, like I said with Sonic 1, this is a game I think anyone can enjoy. It's certainly harder than the first one, which could turn some gamers off, but I think that if you just keep going, you'll find some great things with this game, like the multiplayer. While it's not much, it was a great addition, and it certainly helped Sonic in the console wars. Even though it's a tough game, that doesn't stop it from being great. Not only is Sonic 2 a great game, but in my opinion, it's superior to the original, and I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10. So what do I think of this game? Honestly, I think it's another nearly perfect platformer. It was the best thing anyone could have hoped for in a sequel to Sonic 1. Sure, it's difficult at times, and sure, most of the levels were scrapped, but you know, for what it is, this is an amazing game, and I'll certainly be returning to it in the future.
So, what would the third installment in the Sonic franchise bring us? Well, not only a red gliding echidna, a new look for Sonic, but also one of the first add-ons in gaming history. So stay tuned. I'm Joshua Gillespie, and thank you for watching.